is because we met them where they were at, right? We used to, when they go low, we go high. We changed our approach. We said, when they go low, we're going to go like medium. Okay, we're not going to go all the way down where they're at, but we're not going to go up here because up here didn't work. It doesn't break through.
Congressman Moskowitz, good to have you on the show. I've got a lot to discuss, but I got to ask you, why are you wearing this jacket? You're indoors right now.
I thought this podcast was going to be outside. Have you moved it inside?
We have moved it inside. That's where the podcast will be taking place. But
this thing is hot, man. I thought we were going to be outside. I'm sorry.
Yeah. We are inside. The inauguration is going to be moved inside, but I do like the jacket. I do want to ask you this, though.
By the way, that's probably a good, look, him moving it inside is probably a good move. Like, I put my old emergency management hat on for a second, and I probably think to myself, well, there's thousands of people working outside. They're going to be out there all day. You know, you're talking about law enforcement, and you're talking about security personnel, emergency management folks, first responders. You're talking about horses. So, if I put that hat on, yeah, I think the president's making a good decision. If you just ask me, Jared Moskowitz, right, me personally, this is also a great way to avoid shrinkage. And I'm specifically talking about crowd size, of course.
Well, look, I think when it came to the inauguration of JFK, I think he was dressed the way you were dressed, and it was actually colder than it's expected to be on Monday, and no shrinkage there. But we will see what happens. We'll see what happens on Monday. I want to ask you about the Republicans. We've heard Mike Johnson say this, conditioning emergency relief and aid here in California. I'm from Los Angeles. I had to evacuate. And it seems like they're playing with our lives here, saying that it's going to be attached to debt ceiling stuff or other things. What do you make of this idea of conditioning emergency aid?
Well, let me break it up into two things. First, I want to talk about conditioning aid in general, and then let's talk about this debt ceiling thing, because there's a strategy here that Democrats should be aware of. So I have always been against conditioning disaster aid. I believe disaster aid always needs to be clean because disasters hit Democrats, Republicans all alike. A hurricane doesn't pick a Democratic bloc or a Republican bloc. And I'm deathly afraid that once we start this of conditioning disaster aid, we'll never get out of it. That's how this will go. We saw this many years ago when Republicans tried to hold up the Sandy Recovery Reinvestment Act for New York and New Jersey, didn't want to help the Democratic states. And then Democrats wanted to return that favor a couple years later when Hurricane Harvey hit Texas. Since then, it has not been politicized. But being from Florida, I said it when this was first proposed, that Congress is like high school. It's tit for tat. When one side does one thing, the other side is happy to return the favor. And being from Florida, if they do this to California, what do you think the California delegation is going to do to Florida when the Democrats finally take the House? That's the largest delegation that the Democrats have. They will condition aid to Florida. They'll say, you know what, we won't give Florida aid unless they get on board with climate change. And so this is a terrible precedent to start. It's not how we should conduct disaster aid. Disasters need to stay nonpartisan. When partisanship happens, like when FEMA didn't give aid to those 20 people because they had Trump flags, I called that out. That was inappropriate. This is also inappropriate what the speaker is proposing in general. Now, why is he proposing it? It's not because he actually wants to condition disaster aid. He has figured an out. Here's the out. Republicans don't have the votes to raise the debt ceiling on their own. They don't have it. They need the Democrats. They were going to do it in reconciliation. Well, that's a problem. They put it in reconciliation. They're still going to need Democratic votes in the House. They only have a 3-vote majority. Well, they're going to lose a certain amount of people who don't ever want to raise the debt ceiling. So now they're going to need the Democrats. Oh, how do we get out of this? Aha, we'll tie it to California aid. So if we can raise the debt ceiling before we get to reconciliation, then we don't need a single Democrat for reconciliation. We don't need a bipartisan deal. So Democrats would be weakening our hand, weakening Hakeem Jeffries, if we allow them to tie California aid to the debt ceiling. Not only do I know this, they've told us this is the idea, right? They've made those statements that, oh, if they can just get the debt ceiling up with California aid, then they'll be able to do whatever they want in reconciliation. And so at the end of the day, it shouldn't happen because we don't want to start this precedent, but there is a strategy behind what they are doing. They're going to hold the people of California hostage so that they can get a reconciliation bill that doesn't involve Democratic negotiation. So look, they're going to make us take a bunch of tough votes, I'm sure, and make us deny California aid and then telling us we were terrible. Excuse me. Republicans conditioned Israeli aid. Remember that? They conditioned the aid to Israel on the IRS cuts, and it died. It didn't get the 2/3. And so they didn't send aid to Israel for 8 months because they wanted to condition it. So they've played these games before. And so at the end of the day, if they play these games again, Democrats are going to have to stand strong. We will get aid to California. That will happen, okay? Because under the Stafford Act, putting my emergency management hat back on, under the Stafford Act, they legally have to send the reimbursement aid. They could put strings on the mitigation money. They could do that, and that wouldn't be so bad by saying, hey, look, here's the mitigation money, which is to mitigate for future disasters. Use this money this way and that way so to help, mitigate this from happening again. They could do that. That would be fair. But they can't do that with the reimbursement money, even if they try, but we got to stop them.
So if Republicans condition aid in California on debt ceiling or other things, you and Democrats vote against that and say, look, you don't condition it. That's where you think you go with it?
I do. Now, it depends how many votes they're going to lose, right? If they put debt ceiling with aid, I mean, if they lose 2 votes or 3 votes and we only lose 2 or they only need to find 2 or 3 Dems, they might be able to do that. If they lose 10 people, then at the end of the day, they won't have enough Democratic votes. I'm someone who always votes for aid. The first time I did not vote for aid since I've been in Congress was when they conditioned it to the debt ceiling for the FEMA bill, right? The one that we just passed in December, the $100 billion of FEMA funding, they tried to condition to the debt ceiling. We said no to that. And a couple of days later, we got the FEMA funding without the debt ceiling increase. So we're going to get this aid for California. We're going to get it. It's going to happen. Again, statutorily, they have to send the Stafford Act reimbursement money. But before they want to talk and negotiate with us, they're going to try to run us over and see how many votes they can pick up. Can't do that. Not going to allow it.
Let's talk about some of the chaos, though, we're seeing within that Republican conference. Earlier in the week, the Republican chair of the Intelligence Committee, Mike Turner, was removed from his position by Mike Johnson. It was believed to be at the directive of Donald Trump. Turner was a big supporter of NATO, a big supporter of Ukraine. He was very skeptical of people like Tulsi Gabbard. And the reporting is that's one of the main reasons why he had to go. Your experience with Turner, how dangerous is this? What's your overall response?
Well, again, there are still very few committees left that are nonpartisan, bipartisan. The intelligence community and committee is one of them. And so this was a shock, not just to the Democrats, it was a shock to the Republicans and to Mike Turner, quite frankly. I don't know if it was directed or not directed, but this is, if you care about NATO and you care about Ukraine and you care about foreign affairs being nonpartisan, bipartisan, us versus the world, if that's what you care about, then this is a big concern. Because now you're worried about someone becoming more divisive and more political, being put into that position, which again, every time you break something in Congress, it stays broken. And so here's another thing that we're going to break, another thing that Congress is going to become dysfunctional on. And there are long-term repercussions for these things, which is why we can't pass bills. It's why we can't, stop our spending. It's why we can't do a lot of things in Congress because we have broken it. And so this is just another area, of that. In my conversations with Mike Turner, seemed to be a reasonable guy. He voted with Donald Trump 90% of the time. So, but by the way, if you're a Republican House caucus and you only have a 3-vote majority and you got to try to keep everybody together, there are going to be repercussions for this infighting that is going on. And that's what happens when you have all 3 branches of government. You wind up fighting amongst yourselves. This is just the beginning of that.
What do you make of Trump's infatuation on a daily basis with annexing countries, Canada, talking about potentially using military force in Greenland? Obviously, that's part of one of our NATO allies, the Kingdom of Denmark, Panama. These threats happen on a daily basis. Is this a distraction, do you think, because of the fact that prices are not going to be lower, housing is not going to be more affordable? Is he trying to have us look one way while all of his promises, there's not going to be peace in Ukraine in 24 hours? We know Keith Kellogg said that's not going to happen. Do we take this seriously, or do we need to really kind of point people back to he's doing this because promises are being broken? What do you think about that?
Well, he's also never going to have dinner with Hannibal Lecter, right? I mean, that dinner's never going to happen either. Listen, Donald Trump is a communications master, and we have constantly undervalued his communication skill. We've tossed it off as not serious and silly, and many times it is. But he's just a master at sales and communications, maybe the best, not just around now, but maybe one of the best ever. You might not like what he's selling, okay, but at the end of the day, it's clear he knows how to communicate. And so, look, in these instances, he's doing a master communication strategy by overloading the system with so many different things that you can't respond because you're all over the place, okay? And, you know, he's a master troll, so he's trolling these other folks. And when he's doing that, that's how he negotiates whatever deals he thinks he's going to work out, or tariffs, or on NATO, or on other fronts. And so, look, let's take them individually, okay? Let's take Greenland. He's not going to use military force on Greenland, okay? But if he negotiated with Denmark that we were going to get Greenland for a fair price, I don't know that I would oppose that. Why would we oppose that? It's no different than when we were getting Alaska or Louisiana Purchase. If we can get Greenland, if Denmark wants to sell that for a fair price, great. Don't know that's going to happen, but I don't have a problem if he wants to talk about Greenland. Panama Canal, I mean, listen, the Chinese are on the march. They are, and the Panama Canal is one of those places. But then we got to be honest, you can't cut foreign aid to countries if you are then worried about the Panama Canal. The reason why China is having more influence at the Panama Canal and other countries is because they're increasing their foreign aid. They're not isolating from the world, which is what is being proposed by some of Trump's allies. And so, look, I am concerned about China's influence at the Panama Canal. Again, we're not going to use military aid there, but this is military action there, but this is part of how he wants to negotiate. Then you get to Canada. Okay, Canada's not going to become the 51st state. Stop it. But hey, look, as far as being a Democrat, if you want to make Canada the 51st state and they were to vote and to come into the union, well, they would have more electoral votes than California. So that means that Republicans could never win under the electoral map if Canada became the 51st state. In fact, Congress would be controlled by the Democrats as well from now until the end of time. So again, no one's really thought that through, like what would be the electoral impact of Canada coming in to the United States. Now let's get to the last one, the fourth one, again, overloading the system as he does. The fourth one he can do, changing the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. By the way, I dare you to poll that. I'm sure that's going to poll in the 90s. Okay, and this is a trap that he sets for Democrats all the time. He wants us to defend the status quo. He wants Democrats to come out and say, I'm outraged. We must keep it the Gulf of Mexico. I'm not going to do that. I'm not falling for that. I'm all for the Gulf of America. You want to name it the Gulf of America? Fantastic. You want to name it the America Ocean? Have at it. I'm not going to sit there and defend the status quo. I think when Democrats are defending the status quo, we're losing. And so, look, they'll float a bill. They'll put a little money into this. They'll change it on American maps. It won't change internationally. But that's his communication strategy. He put four things forward. One of them he can do and control. And yes, it is a distraction from the other things he said he would accomplish on day one that aren't going to get accomplished. But guess what, Ben? We fell for it. The media went bananas with this stuff for days. Oh my God, the Gulf of Mexico, Greenland, Canada, they were distracted for days and weeks on end. So they took the bait. And so that's why he's going to do more of this. We're going to see more of the communication chaos.
Look, corporate media took the bait. Here, what I've been saying is WMD, weapon of mass distraction. Focus on what the issues are here. Are prices going to be lower? Is housing going to be more affordable? And I repeat that over and over again on this network. What's the plan, though, to combat that with your position, with what the Democrats have? Obviously, in the opposition, you don't run the committees. You still have a voice, though, to get your message out. Democrats can get their messages out as a vocal opposition. You're no longer on the oversight committee, although there's probably less action there now, moving over to other committees. So how do you use your voice, and what do the Democrats do here to basically say, okay, all of that's noise? Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico. What about the Gulf of lower egg prices?
Yeah, so the answer is I think Democrats need to change their strategy from the first Trump administration, which was constant resistance, resist everything. I don't think that worked. That was a failed strategy, in my opinion. I think you got to move to a strategy of selective resistance, right? There are going to be some ideas that he'll have that will be fine. right? And we should vote for the fine ones. And then when we find stuff that we find outrageous, that's when we should have our selective resistance. And that way our messaging will be tighter. Again, if we're always outraged, right, we can't get the focus of the American people on why that thing is problematic. So you have to be more selective. We have to pick our spots. We have to be smarter. I was the first one to say that. Now you have other people saying that, right? AOC has said that she's not just going to be a no on everything. Maxwell Frost has said the same thing. Other folks are looking at this and saying, look, we have to figure out how we're now going to communicate for the next 4 years, because we lost the communication war during the Biden administration. I think, if you sat down and you look at the policies and you look at the achievements, Joe Biden achieved more than very many other four-year presidents, one-term presidents. But do the American people know that, right? I don't think so. And they don't, because the Biden administration was one of the worst communication administrations in American history in modern times. They were constantly getting out-communicated. They were like, oh, we'll say it once, and then we don't have to repeat it again. We'll do a big, beautiful infrastructure bill, and then we won't tell anyone or put up any signs. They didn't know how to communicate that. Trump gets that. And he has taught the Republicans how to do that. It has, in my opinion, hurt politics because of misinformation that is out there now, which is now part of the communication strategy on social media. But look, you got to play the game that's being played. We can, harken back to a different time when it wasn't like this, but this is the game now. So you got to play it. And so that's how I think I'm going to continue to communicate. We have to break through. We can't just be like with logic and reasoning. That doesn't work. Why was the Oversight Committee for Democrats so successful the last 2 years? Is because we met them where they were at, right? We used to, when they go low, we go high. We changed our approach. We said, when they go low, we're going to go like medium. Okay, we're not going to go all the way down where they're at, but we're not going to go up here, because up here didn't work. It doesn't break through. So I think we beat them in the Oversight Committee. We knew it was bullshit. We called it out. We showed the American people why it was bullshit. And it's why they didn't impeach Joe Biden, because they couldn't convince the American people that he had done anything that was a high crime and misdemeanor, because they didn't have the goods there. And so, now that I'm moving on to judiciary, I think they're going to run a lot of stuff through judiciary with Jim Jordan. So, we're going to have to figure out, again, you got me, Jamie Raskin, Dan Goldman, Jasmine Crockett, all from oversight coming over to judiciary, because we think that's where they're going to try to run a lot of the playbook. And so, while I will miss my dear friend James, I want him to know, James, I know you're an avid watcher of the show. So if you're watching, James, I'm going to see you soon. Don't worry. I'll visit. I'll wave on. I'll check up on you. I want to help you. Always want to make sure you're a success. And I should have said author, James Comer. He's now an author, Ben. I don't know if you've read the book. It's been hard for me to put it down, quite frankly. Because it's got some weight to it. If you open the pages, what's weird, it's like 16-point font. So not a lot of words per page, which is good. I assume it's a quick read. The About Author page is fascinating. I mean, right, he's been in politics a long time, but the About Author page is 2 sentences. So, I think that captures.
I've seen the book in a lot of public restrooms, and so I've seen it out and about. Congressmember Jared Moskowitz, thank you for joining us. Keep us posted on all of the developments in the 119th, and we'll hope to have you on soon.
You got it. Thanks, Ben.
All right, hit subscribe, everybody. Let's get to 4 million subscribers. Have a great day.
Love this video? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch and help us blow past 500,000 followers.